Hello, everybody. Today I'll be doing the top 10 strange bookish facts about myself. I wasn't tagged by anyone in particular. I've watched a few videos on BookTube about it. I enjoyed some of the responses and I decided to do it for myself. If you haven't been tagged and if you would like to do it, consider yourself tagged. Some of these aren't really that strange. I know some booktubers were going more in detail about different facts and everything. I thought about a little bit, but I couldn't come up with like a lot of really strange facts. But hopefully this will do. And some of these I've mentioned in previous videos, so I'll try to. Sorry if there's any repeats. Number one. When I was in second grade, I remember collecting books, and I think I was the only kid who really did that at the time that I knew of. I mean, in my area, I kind of grew up in a very small town, and the elementary school I attended was very small as well. And I was in Boy Scouts, and everyone is like bringing your collection. Some of it was different types of toys, video games, whatever was a couple other things, anything typical second graders would have. I do remember that I brought in my book collection. It wasn't nothing like Shakespeare or any literary classics, more books geared to children, like early chapter books that I brought in. But that's always kind of stuck with me in a way. So that's number one. Number two. Actually, I don't have it with me. Hold on just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, number two. I've been keeping a journal of every book I've read since 2011. Here, I'll show you. I used a different book originally, but I lost that one, and I've had this one since 2013, I want to say. Yeah, it was 2013. 2013, I transferred what I was keeping record of back from 2011 to this one. And I've kept up with it. Basically, I just write the number of book I read. So I'm like book 100 since 2011 is such and such. I'll get the title. And if it's a series, I'll put like part one of the Unwind series or something. And then the author's name. I know there's a lot of people who go more in detail about that. I don't, and this one's more personal. I feel like I keep my books more updated in this than my Goodreads account, which I mean I'm semi-consistent on Goodreads, but this is more just for personal reasons. Number three of the most strange bookish facts that aren't quite strange is I mostly hate giving book recommendations, especially to non-readers or people who read very little, because like you'll get someone like you talk about reading, or they see something that you like reading or what have you, and they'll be like, "Oh, what book would you recommend?" And you're just like, "Well, you do know them, but it doesn't mean you know their taste." And you're kind of put on the spot because there's like so many books out there. And usually, I mean, I feel like they expect you to choose the book that like their favorite book. Since you read so much, you should be able to just guess what their favorite book is. And I can. I mean, I might like Lord of the Rings, they may not. I might like romance or mystery, they may be geared more towards nonfiction. Even if I know them personally, I'm not really good at guessing. My favorite, my what kind of book conversations I'm more geared towards is what I'm currently reading and what others may be currently reading. I feel like you get better book recommendations like that than just like, oh, guess what kind of books I like to read. But usually those come for more non-readers or people who said they've only read a book in the last 3 years or something, from what I've noticed. Number 4. My Kindle is the majority of my reading. I do read books, like physical books, more geared towards paperback than hardback. But I don't know. I like to read the Kindle. I know some people, it's not really strange per se, but I know a lot of people in BookTube usually tend to gear more towards the physical novels than the Kindle. But I like to read at night, and I don't really like the light on. And I have the Paperwhite one, to where it has like the light built in, and you can dim it a lot, and you can make the size of the print bigger. And since it's like smaller, it's just easier to hold. So I usually tend to read a majority of my books on that. Number 5. My bed is my favorite place to read, and it didn't used to always be that way. Sorry if I say too much. When I first started reading, I would read more in a chair or on the floor or something of that nature. Then when I was moving around a lot and I didn't have much space, and I didn't have much furniture, I kind of got used to reading in the bed. And now it's kind of switched to where I enjoy reading in bed more than I do in my chair or other places as well. I'm not very good at reading in public places. I can, and I have, and I've tried, but it just doesn't work out as much, and I don't hardly ever do it. Number 6, cleaning is the biggest distraction to my reading. This is almost kind of like borderline OCD. Not so much with like germs and disinfecting everything, but the house really has... I try to read, but then I start noticing sometimes that like, oh, my t-shirt's out, or this needs to be thrown away, this piece of paper or something. And I start cleaning, and that is the biggest deterrent from my reading that there is. Also may go back to why I read in bed. That way I can clean one room, close the door, not look at the rest of the house, and just read. Number 7. I didn't really know there was like a bookish subculture until around 2010, the end of. I always thought I was kind of the odd one. I knew people read, and I know there was bookstores and people who really liked reading, but it wasn't until 2010 till I really started to know that there was almost like a cult following of readers. And not like, I knew there's like readers who, like people who really like Harry Potter, they have their own little subgroup, and people who really like Lord of the Rings, or people who really like maybe nonfiction books, especially like political or like certain wars, like World War II, Vietnam, Civil War. But I didn't know there was like a general subculture of just people who really love books until 2010. That's when, honestly, I started getting my first Kindle, and it was actually when I first had Wi-Fi. So I would explore the internet a little more. I did have internet up to before that, but it was on the bigger tower computers, like about that big. I mean, a little bigger. The older ones with like Windows, what is it, XP. So I was on the internet, but not. So most websites were a little more primitive back then. But now you can follow like book lovers Facebook pages, Instagram accounts, YouTube, and so forth, and even like Goodreads and so forth, where it's just geared towards that. Number 8. I have a distaste for current political novels and autobiographies. I do follow politics and I do lean more towards the left, but regardless of the political stance, and I don't really tend to read right-wing propaganda that much, at all. I find it hard to read current political novels because things change so much, and I don't feel like any resource can be not so much trusted, but like I kind of like introspective. Like I like historical novels or historical nonfiction because the events have already occurred. It's not happening now. And you can see the cause, the reaction, why it led to it. With current political novels, some new information come out soon as the book's published. And not that I don't keep up on the news or anything like that. I can read like articles and so forth, but as for a whole novel dedicated to such and such a subject that's like currently happening, I just can't do it. As for autobiographies, I can read biographies, but for like people who write about themselves, I always feel like no one's really going to make themselves look bad, and I always feel like you're going to have, it's not going to be as clear cut as if someone else writes about you, does the research. Basically, I'm trying to think of the word here. Your opinion of yourself sometimes can be too misleading. So, yeah, not a big fan of autobiographies, but I do enjoy biographies though. No problem with that. Number 9. Audiobooks. I know there's a lot, not a lot, I don't know if there's a lot, I've never seen a poll or a study on it, but I know a lot of people, especially here on BookTube, sometimes, from what I've seen from certain people, saying like audiobooks aren't real books or it shouldn't count. How I feel about it, I see books as more as an art of storytelling than like cognitive exercises. And technically, besides it being played on electronic media, audiobooks are stories that you hear auditorily, is the original form of storytelling. Before the world was more literate, for certain areas more literate, the only way you could hear stories was from word of mouth. And this even goes back to like older religious texts. Most of them they would hear it over and over again, and then you would just tell other people about it. So I feel audiobooks are a source of reading material. I do feel semi-strongly about this, and I don't feel like no one I guess I'm getting old because I feel pretty set in that audiobooks are legitimized in my eyes as reading. And lastly, number 10. I tend to read pretty much every genre. I tend to read certain genres more than most, except for one. And it's not even a genre per se, but I don't feel like I've hardly ever read any short stories, and I always feel bad. And I've tried to look up short stories and so forth, but I've never actually consistently sat down and started reading them. I I don't know if I'm going too soon. I was thinking about maybe doing like Lovecraft's short. Oops, sorry, I hit the table. Now the camera's shaking. I was thinking about doing Lovecraft short stories because I know he's been an author I've been interested in but never really read. But I know enough of like the mythos and Cthulhu and all that to have a basic understanding of his writings. I'm considering trying that as my first set of short stories. But also I kind of want to move into like literary fiction of short stories as well. If you guys know any good situations with or any books you can recommend, or even magazine subscriptions where it would have short stories, please do leave a comment down below. I've always felt guilty. I don't know how strange that is, but yes, I've always felt guilty about that with my book reading life. Alright, so that's the 10 bookish facts. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you watched in, thank you for watching, and if you would to do the tag yourself, I'll leave some links to different videos I watched of the same tag, and consider yourself tagged. Alright, thanks guys, bye.